Boker Tov. Ma Shlomchem. Some of you are still trying to make up your mind whether it's Tov or Ra, or whether it's Tov Me'od or Ra Me'od. All right? Ra, Kyle says. 3 weeks before his wedding. We're going to have to talk to Stephanie about that. All right. Today we want to go back over again on lesson 12. We're going to be looking in a minute at the workbook exercise 11, but I want to go back over 12. You were to have read it for today, and you're to do the workbook exercise number 12 for this, for Thursday. So we want to take a look at that chapter and go over the personal pronouns one more time. They're very, very important. Later today, we'll get you started on verbs, and you're going to find out how very important these pronouns are when we get to it. So when we talk about personal pronouns, we've got to talk about person, number, and gender. What persons do we have in the Hebrew grammar? Third. What else? Second and first. Third, second, and first persons. What numbers do we have available in Hebrew grammar? Singular and plural. There's also dual for some noun forms, remember. And what do we have for genders? Masculine, feminine, and common. Correct. So as we look at these, the first person singular and plural, the second person singular we're going to look at here. The first person is the common gender, and the second person is masculine, feminine. And we have ani anoki. Everyone pronounce it? Ani anoki. What does it mean, Chad? First person, common singular. How do you refer to yourself? I. Okay, it's I. So ani anoki I. In the Ten Commandments, one of the Ten Commandments, short form, is anokiya. That means I am Yahweh. I am Yahweh. All right? Then in the plural, we have anachnu or nachnu. Everyone? Anachnu, nachnu. All right? What does that mean, Franz?
It's
We. We. The plural, first person, is we. First person is I and we. Second person is you. Third person is he, she, it, and they. All right? So the second person masculine singular is ata, and it's also pronounced the same way for the second spelling, ata. One has the comments hey, one just has the comments. Everyone pronounce it? Ata and ata. They're both pronounced ata. Then we go to the feminine singular, and it's at. Everyone? At. All right? So as we look at these, try to keep these in mind. They're very significant, very important. One of the ways to remember the I is it has the E on the end, a hirik yod. The yod is the equivalent of a Y, and the hirik is a I-class vowel. So you have a hirik yod is a long I-class vowel, so it's the I. And just think of it as the I word, ani, and anoki, I. Can't help you out so well on anachnu that way, or ata, or at. There's not the simple conventions there to try to remember them. You have to figure out other ways to remember them. All right, let's look at the second person plural. In the masculine, atem. Everyone? Atem. In the feminine, we have atena and aten. Everyone? Atena, aten. All right? Those will both be translated as you, the same as the singulars are, because in English we don't make any distinctive difference between the you that is plural and the you that is singular. And then we have the third masculine singular pronoun, who. Everyone? Who. What does it mean, Scott Basolo?
he.
He. All right. And the third feminine singular is he. Everyone?
He.
Dennis, what does it mean?
She.
She. Now you'll notice that there's no it here. That's because depending upon the gender of the noun that is an it, then that will be the one that is used. If you're talking about the eyeball, the eye, that is a feminine noun. And so if you're referring to it specifically, and you want to emphasize that, then you would use he, the feminine, because the noun is feminine, even though we think of it as an it. The eyeball is an it, not a he or a she. And if you're talking about a stone, Evan, if you're talking about it specifically and emphatically, then since stone, Evan, the noun, is a masculine noun, then you would use the masculine pronoun to refer to it. And so you'd use who with it. Scott?
Question, when we're translating and we're taking a word and then making it plural and we don't know what gender it is there a tool to help us with that?
They're called vocabulary lists in the back of your textbook and lexicons, dictionaries.
Okay, but the vocabulary list doesn't have any plurals or any
No,
gender.
you have to learn how to form those yourself.
Well,
But you find it out by knowing the forms that are used, and then you just find out the gender of your noun. And your vocabulary list or lexicon gives you the gender of the noun. Then you can know how to form the plural.
okay, 'cause I'm not finding the genders in our vocabulary, so we need to get
They're given to you in the cases where it is significant and important to know. And so you're not going to be asked to create words that you don't know. You always will know, like, for example, Melech, king, is obviously masculine. You don't need to be told that. If you're not told, you can assume it's a masculine, because the feminines are normally marked for you. Okay? And the masculines are unmarked nouns. They don't really have an ending. Okay? So if there's no marking, you can assume it's masculine. All right? And then we go to the third person plural. Masculine is hema and haim. Everyone? Hema and haim. What's the meaning of it, Roger? They. All right? And then the feminine is Hena and Hain. Hena and Hain. Everyone? Hena and Hain. George, what's the meaning? They. In English, notice they're both translated the same. They masculine, they feminine. But it's the third person plural. It's a third person plural. Remember, third person is he, she, or it. Because you're referring to a person other than yourself, someone who's remote, and not someone that's direct. Second person is you, first person is yourself. And that means I and we, especially if there's plural there, okay? So those are our personal pronouns. Very important and significant for us to remember and to learn. Now, before we leave off here, I want you to take a look at exercise 12 that you are to be doing for Thursday. I want to go over that with you. Notice, first of all, that you are to translate the Hebrew phrases and sentences into smooth English. And I want you to be certain to pay attention to any of the footnotes that might provide any additional information that is important for you. The biblical references are not given to you in order to have you go look it up first. That's just to let you know you're translating Scripture as you're translating, and therefore to ask you to be a little bit more careful in how you're translating. I can remember being a photo typesetter at Eisenbrauns when I was working on my doctoral program, and we received an article that was written by Moshe Gottstein to be published in the Biblical Archaeologist, which I was typesetting. And along with it came a note. And the note said, please add to this article the following warning. And so we put it in there. You can go find it in the library. You can find that issue and look it up. It was on the Aleppo Codex, and there were photographs of the Aleppo Codex of the Hebrew Bible, primarily from the book of Deuteronomy. And as we were doing that and publishing that, the note that he wanted us to add was, remember that the text you have here in photographic reproduction is Holy Scripture. Therefore, treat this article with the same respect you would the Scriptures themselves. And that is the Jewish approach. I mean, they are not going to put a Bible on the floor. They're not going to burn it. They're not going to allow it to get coffee spilled on it or things like that. They're going to take care of it. And so he wanted to make certain that we told the readers that because they were looking at photographs of the biblical text, they should treat it as such, with respect. I thought that was fascinating. And it gave me quite an insight into the way that the Jewish people look at the treatment of Scripture. But anyway, I'm not telling you don't set your coffee cup on your workbook, but I am telling you, you are translating Scripture. So try to do your best, try to make it sound smooth, and try to take care for accuracy. And then you're to translate the following sentences to Hebrew. The man who dwelt in the great city is good. Now, when you're dealing with a sentence like that, let's just talk through this for a minute. I want to just have us think about this. What is the first thing you're going to look for in this English sentence as you're starting your translation? Jeff? A verb. Why?
It's going to go first.
All right. Verbs are first in Hebrew order, so look for the verb. Now, we find that in this sentence, what is our verb? No, that's inside a relative clause. It's not the main verb. The main verb is. Now, since the main verb is, that tells us that perhaps the verb is not going to show in Hebrew, right? Because noun clauses have is, was, will be, understood. Now look at the sentence and let's look for the second thing. And this is what we're doing here is what I want you to do for every one of them. It's correct. First, look for the verb. But make certain it's the main verb. The main verb. Okay, and we'll come back to the relative clause in a minute. All right, now look at that sentence again. We've looked for the verb. We found the main verb is, so we've determined it's probably going to be a noun clause in which we don't write the verb is. It's going to be understood. What do we look for next or look at next? A subject. And what is the subject, Scott Basolo?
The man.
The man. Okay, the man is the subject. Now, what is said about that man, Chad?
He's good.
Okay, he is good. Now, what have we learned about that? What do we call that?
Object?
Pardon?
Is that the object?
No, it's not the object. Remember, an object is where you have an action committed against or on something. Okay, it's a predicate, but what is it? A predicate what? Predicate adjective. Now, what about the rule of predicate adjective, Dennis? What are the rules? What do you know about predicate adjectives? George? Jan?
They follow the noun.
Attributive adjectives follow the noun. Predicate adjectives go where? Normally, predicate adjectives occur first. All right? And predicate adjectives, we also know, do not what? Do not have the article. Okay, so if it goes first and the verb is understood, then what is our first word in our Hebrew sentence? Tov. Exactly right. We're going to put tov in here. So now we've begun. We've got is good out of the way. But now we have to put who is good. So who is it that's good? The man. Okay, now you have two choices of words you've learned in vocabulary to use for man, right? Ish and Adam. So let's try it with both of them. So what is the form for if we put an article on Ish? What's the article on Ish? Okay, Ha-Ish. And if we use Adam, which I'll use up here on this one, what article do we use? Not with pathic. You still got the olive, so it's the same form, isn't it? Ha-Adam, but you also have to put a little metheg there. Remember? Okay, so we have the man is good. What else do we have in the sentence? Relative clause. Okay, now what do we do with the relative clause? What's the first thing in a relative clause in Hebrew? Asher, the relative pronoun asher. And so asher comes next then. All right? Notice that this relative clause is an adjectival clause that modifies the man. And so it follows the word it modifies. I'm going to move ha-ish out of the way because we'll need some room here. The man, who. All right? Notice we don't use me here. Me is when you have a question. All right? So we have asher is the relative pronoun. So we have tov ha-adam asher. The man is good who, what's next said about him? Who dwelt. Who dwelt. David Lee, what's the word for dwelt? Kelly?
I can find out in just a second.
All right, good. See, that's what you got to do. You've got to look it up. All right, he's going to look it up. We'll let him look it up there. Okay, you can use shakan. And notice here, we're just going to use the third masculine singular form that we've learned in our vocabulary because this is third masculine singular. It's the man, so you refer to the man with he. All right? So who dwelt, we could use shakan, and what else? Another verb. What other verb can we use that we've learned? Did I hear it? Yashav. Yashav means to sit or dwell. Either one of these will work. All right? You can use either one. So we've got two options here. And we've got two options here. Now, what are we next told about the dwelling? Where did he dwell?
In the city.
In the city. Gus, how do we say in? No, that's unto. John?
The base preposition.
The base preposition. All right, so we're going to have a base preposition. And what's the word for city? Eric? Ear. Remember, that's this way. All right, now it's in the city. So we have to put the pointing for the article here. What's the pointing going to be, Mike? A commas, right, because it'd be ha ear, so it becomes ba ear. All right, in the city. Is there anything we're missing? Great city. Now, city in your vocabulary is marked for gender. What's the gender? Feminine. Feminine. So if it's feminine, if we're going to say great, how do we write? What do we have to do here? We have a definite feminine singular noun. So our attributive adjective has to be what? Definite, feminine, and singular. So we're going to know that there's going to be an article here. What's the word for great? Gadol. And we're going to look at gadol here. And how do we make it feminine singular? Gadolah, all right. Now, since we have this added thing here, what are we going to do with the vowel that was here? Shorten it to a schwa. A schwa, all right? Now, how do we point the article? A pathak, anything else? A dogish and the gimel. Okay, because it's not a guttural. It's not a guttural. Kyle?
Just repeat what you just said about the, because I'm really struggling with the accenting. It's destroying me. So.
Okay, we're not talking about accents here.
Well, not the accent, but
The vowels?
pointing. Yeah, the pointing.
The vowels, okay. Well, first of all, to make it feminine, we had to add comet say. And we add that comet say, that means that the ga-dol, this was originally a comets here, is the third main vowel back, and it has to be shortened.
Okay, and the only thing it can short to is a schwa.
In this situation, that's all it is, yes.
How come it couldn't be a pathak?
Because if you put a pathak here, you have a pathak and an open syllable. Because the daleth has to go with this vowel. This vowel can't be here alone. It has to have a consonant. So the daleth is going to go with this vowel. So this would have to be in a open syllable. In a pathic, a short vowel doesn't stand that way in an open syllable. And so we have to instead make it a schwa, and the gimel is doubled, and so it's actually pronounced twice. The first time this is silent, the next time it's vocal. So this is the vocal schwa beginning the syllable, gadol. Gadol.
Closing the previous syllable?
No, it closes it because you have half of it there, yes.
Right.
Because it's really this way.
Can schwa stand alone in the syllable?
Pardon?
Can schwa stand alone in the syllable?
Can a schwa stand alone? And what do you mean by that?
I mean, if it's only one gimel with the schwa, then it's only one.
It can, but that's not the case here.
If there were no article, if there were no
If there was no article here, and if this was in a city, it'd be this way. A vocal schwa to begin it. Gedolah. Remember, you shorten that third syllable back as short as possible. And this is the shortest possible. Okay? But since we have an article here, we have to have an article here. Does that help, Kyle?
Yes.
All right? And again, you can try to remember the rules, but one of the best things to do is go back to the charts in that chapter in your syllabus, not the syllabus, the textbook. Go back to the textbook, go to the chart that shows all the forms, and goes through them and says, okay, this is what you do. And also in your workbook exercise on the adjectives.
So when
Go ahead.
you say the shortest pointing possible, does that mean, okay, if it's a path act, then it goes to comments? If it's
No.
No?
Comments is a long vowel.
Yeah, okay. So comments goes to path act.
Comments goes to a path act if it's not going all the way, but you want to try to make it as short as possible, and that goes far beyond this. This is as short as possible. All right? Yes, Scott?
Just refresh my memory on the ha-adam, the accent there. Is there a rule that I'm forgetting, or is it just kind of?
You just have to memorize.
That's just one that's up.
You have to, that's one of those you have to memorize it. With the ha-adam, you have to put that there. All right? Okay, anyone else? All right. So now you've got the answer to the first one. See, I've already helped you with some of your homework. And you should have it right if you copied this down, correctly. All right? But notice how you do that. You look at the sentence, you realize the verb is first, so you look for the main verb. When you find the verb, and if you find it's is, you say, oh, well, this is going to be a noun clause. So then look at it again, you find out there's a predicate adjective. The rule about predicate adjective, it always stands first, or that's its normal position anyway. It doesn't always end up that way, but it normally should be first, and it does not have an article on it. And so you take the adjective, you put it first without an article on it, and then you put the noun, which is the subject, next, and then the modifier for the subject is the relative clause, and the relative pronoun is a share, and it's always first in the relative clause. And then inside the clause, you just proceed with whatever words you have. And you just move on down through it and make certain that you have agreement between any adjectives and nouns that are involved. And make certain your articles are there if you need an article there. Okay? Any other questions? All right. I trust you'll enjoy that. Notice also you have a little extra bonus there. You have a Hebrew crossword puzzle. And notice the little note in the box says, omit all vowel pointings and final forms must fit both directions. So if you're going to use the final form, it has to fit both directions, both down and across. So watch that carefully because some of those won't fit that way, because then the final form going across will be the first letter going down. So don't make it a final form in that. Otherwise you'll get confused. So just do that. All right? Now, let's go to our exercise for today. Notice that you had a table, a supplementary table of construct forms. The supplementary table is given to you in order that you might have more examples than those given in the textbook itself to help you work through the issues. Some of the questions that, for example, Scott had and others of you had here about various words and how do I know what form to use. We try to provide you with as many different pieces of information possible and hopefully sufficient information for you to be able to do the exercise. In other words, there shouldn't be anything in your exercise that is not in your textbook or given as additional information in your worksheet. We're not expecting you to be diviners or extrasensory perception to try to guess at something. We've tried to provide you with exactly what information you need. And so if you look at these charts, you should have everything you need to do the exercise. So let's begin, first of all, by translating the first Hebrew phrase there at the bottom of the page, Wechoshek al panei tehom. And let's start with Jan.
And darkness and deep darkness upon the surface.
Okay. Darkness upon the surface of the deep. Darkness upon the surface of the deep, and you can translate it that way, or you can translate it's a noun clause you might just remember from your memorization of Genesis 1, and 2. That's darkness was upon the face of the deep. But whatever you put here, remember, tehom goes with panei, surface of or faces of the deep. If you just put deep or a deep because you didn't see an article on there, that's fine. You can do that. By context, in the first mention of such things, it's understood to be definite even though it doesn't have it. But you don't have a context here. All right, Eric, question?
That's what I was going to ask.
That's what you're going to ask, okay. So you could translate this darkness and darkness upon the surface or faces of the deep or a deep, all right, can be used there. Any other questions, or do you have any other translations you want to check on this one? Now, it's not deep darkness. Tehom doesn't describe choshek. Tehom stays with panei. All right? All right, number two, Greg?
The gap, or just the...
Go ahead.
Okay. The gap, hayam,
All right, Degat Hayam,
the fish of the sea.
the fish of the sea. The fish of the sea. Why do we say the fish? Anyone? Because sea is definite. And in a construct chain, if the last word is definite, then the whole chain is definite. The fish of the sea. All right. Any other questions on that one? Yes, David?
Would it be incorrect to say the fishes of the sea?
The fishes of the sea? No. It's singular here. Okay? It's a feminine singular. It's not the goat. It's the gat, feminine singular.
C definite.
Why is the sea definite? Just as we often speak about the ocean. But here it doesn't matter why. It's just the language examples. So you just translate what's there. Okay? Number 3, Gus.
The head of the mountain.
Okay, you want to read the Hebrew for us too? Thought you were going to get away with it real fast. Notice how quick you came out with the English.
Rawe-i,
Rashi.
Rashe, He, Harim,
Heharim. Right,
Harim.
right. Okay, everyone, let's read that together. Rashi Heharim. One more time. Rashi Heharim. Okay, and it was the what?
The head of the mountain.
How about plural? Rashi is plural. The heads of the mountains, or the tops of the mountains, or the peaks of the mountains. All are acceptable. Okay? Sarayod is always plural. Sarayod is always plural. All right? Number 4, John Milcon.
Asher Asa Sham.
Excellent. Okay?
Unto the place of the altar which he made there.
All right. Unto the place of the altar which he made there. And this one works out in the exact order it's given in the Hebrew. Place has to have the article. It's in construct relationship with a definite noun, ha-mitzbeach. Remember, in a construct chain, if the last noun in the chain has the article, then they all must be given the article in translation. Okay? Any questions on this one? Any other alternative translations that you have there that you want to check out? All right. Let's go to number 5 then. Number 5, James Lee.
Ben he Ave Avram.
Okay, Ben Ahi Avram. All right, and what does it mean?
The son of the father of Abraham.
The son of the who of Abraham? Ah is what, as opposed to Av?
Oh, the brother of Abraham.
The brother of Abraham, the son of the brother of Abraham. That's Lot, right? And so a son of a brother could also be translated as what? Nephew. So you could translate this either as the nephew of Abram or the son of the brother of Abram. Chad?
This is definite or indefinite?
It is definite because Avram is a proper name. Proper names are definite. So if it's the end of the construct chain is here, then the whole chain is definite. The son of the brother of Abram. Okay? Is that wrong if you don't have the It's wrong if you don't have the definite articles. All right? That's the purpose of these worksheets, is to teach those rules and remind you of them. Sometimes it's painful to be reminded of them. You pay a penalty, but as you pay the penalties, then you start remembering when it costs you something. George?
Abram's brother, is that okay?
Abram's brother's son.
Or son of Abram's brother? Son of Abram.
It has to be the son of Abram's brother.
Okay.
If it's the son of Abram's brother, yes, I'll count it. All right? Because in a possessive like that, you can do that. Okay, so you could have the son of Abram's brother, or you could have Abram's brother's son. All right? Or the son of the brother of Abram, or the nephew of Abram.
So the Abram's brother.
If you have Abram's nephew,
Abram's nephew.
Abram's nephew is all right. That's correct too. Abram's nephew is correct. All right? And don't be too concerned there because we go over these. Mike Thomason, by the way, who just had the baby, Mike Thomason is my grading helper for 503. And so he looks at your sheets before I do, and then I go back over them again, and I correct anything he missed. And then I also make the decisions on things that he says, well, I don't know if you're going to count this correct or not. So I go through, and then I'm the one who calculates the grades. So he just helps me by marking them first. And so we have two checking this as we go through. Try to catch everything, besides you doing it too. And I found a couple of you sometimes either didn't mark it right or you marked it wrong when it was really right. And so sometimes that's just because in our conversation in class, you didn't ask a question to ask if that was right, if an alternative was right. You just accepted what I said as being, well, that's it. If it's not that, then it's wrong. Well, there are sometimes several options. So if you have something different, always ask. Okay? I don't want to have anyone penalized unnecessarily. All right, number 6. James Wood. We haven't heard from you for a while. Why don't you read the whole thing and translate?
Sniv. Delur.
Mm-hmm.
Me'amid.
Okay.
Erzot. El. Torah.
Korath.
Elohim.
All right.
And they separated themselves from the people of the lands unto the law of God.
Okay, from the peoples, plural, ame, of the lands unto the law of God. All right, questions, Chad?
Since people is plural, couldn't we just say from the people of the land?
Let me explain something about it and answer your question at the same time. In Old Testament Hebrew, the word am, people, refers to ethnic groups. It's not a general word like people that we use in English. Since you would not have known that, I will not penalize you on that, but try to keep that in mind in the future. That whenever you have am and it's in the plural, it's peoples, because they're talking about people groups, ethnic groups like Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Kenites, all right? And so always translate it as the plural peoples. If you didn't this time, no problem, because you had not had that explanation. Chad?
Is there a different word for just a group of people?
Usually that's just the word min in Hebrew. Okay. Any other questions on that sentence? Remember not to count it wrong if you just have people without an S on it, but also maybe make a note there to yourself or for the other person that this is always referring to people groups and therefore should be translated as peoples in the future. Okay? Anyone else? No other questions on it? All right then, let's go to part B. Rewrite the following words in their construct form. If the word is singular, give the singular construct. If plural, the plural construct. In other words, just maintain the same number that's already there. So number one, what's the construct here? Let's just start. Let's see, we just had James do that. Scott Basolo. What's number one? What's the construct of coal?
Koli.
Koli. Did you look back in the textbook and check, see what the construct is?
How about call?
Ah, that works better, doesn't it? It's kaf, kametz, lamed. Kal is the shortened form of kol. Why? Because this is a kametz hatuf. It's a kametz hatuf. You say, but wait a minute. That's in one syllable. But you notice that in many places there's a makef written there. That is because the fact that when this is put in the short form, it's always considered construct, and therefore it's always going to be pronounced together with the following word. And the makef is sometimes used to indicate that as a reminder, not because the makef is a sign of the construct, but it's the most immediate way to say, pronounce this with the following word if you have that word standing by itself. But you know that if it's this way, it has to have another word after it. It's in genitive relationship with it, and it has to be pronounced together with that word. Therefore, this will become an unaccented closed syllable with a kametz. It's a kametz hatuf, and that's a short vowel as opposed to the holum being a long vowel. All right, so this is the construct form of kol, is call. All right, Roger, number two. All right, and that is spelled, remember, with a hatif pathek, and this way, chakam. All right, questions?
Could you explain why the hatif pathek is there versus schwa?
It's there because of the guttural. Gutturals prefer compound schwas. The rules of the gutturals. All right. Yes.
How come that commas doesn't become a pathak? That's what the...
Why doesn't this comments become a pathak?
Because that's what it was doing in the example with davar.
It can become a pathak, depending on the word that follows it, how many syllables are in that word.
So it's okay if we have a pathak.
If you have a pathak there, that's fine. Yes. Comets or pathak, either one. Yes. Eric.
Number one.
Yes.
Coal.
Yes.
Is it still pronounced coal because it's a common tattoo?
It's pronounced kol. It's not as long as the coal, but yes. Okay? All right? Like that? Okay? All right? And then number three. Number three, Dennis? Okay, remember when we have a dual like this, yadayim, is there a dual construct? Is there a dual construct? No. No, there is no such thing as a dual construct. So we have to move to a plural construct. All right? So to get the construct, we have to get the main constants of the noun, which is yad, and we're going to maintain the yod because that is what introduces the plural. We're going to take the meme off of that, and we know this is going to be a tsere yod because masculine plural is always tsere yod. And then, of course, this is reduced as short as possible, so it's a schwa. So yadei is the construct of yadayim. Okay? Yadayim is yadei. Okay? Number 4. George?
It's Ben.
Ben. The tsere becomes a segol. The tsere becomes a segol. Ben. All right? Number 5, Jan.
Gadol, gimel with the schwa.
Okay, good. The gadol becomes gadol. All right? Number 6, Mike.
Tov, there was no change.
No change. Tov remains tov. It's an unchangeable long vowel. It's going to stay. So there's no change in it at all. No change at all. It's like ear in the feminine on your examples, and rosh, head. It has a long vowel and does not change. All right? So let's go to number 7. Number 7, Tom.
You pronounce it Yiddish?
Yad. Yad. Okay? The comment shortens to a pathek, so it's yad. All right? Kyle, number 8.
To have.
You're speaking Aramaic. It's not duh, it's z. Yes. Zahav. Zahav. Zayin with a schwa, hey with a pathic, and a bait. All right? When he said dahav, Aramaic changes the zayin to a daleth. And so in Aramaic, if you read in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, on the head of gold, it's dahav that's used there, the head of gold. So you're ahead of the game. You're already into Aramaic. Okay. Okay, so Franz, number 9.
That's Torah.
Okay, Torah is the construct of Torah. All right? And Kempis, Divarim.
Divrei.
Okay, Divrei. Divrei. Why do we have div there? Anyone? Eric?
Yeah, here it. Not a schwa.
Oh, yeah, it should be a schwa, excuse me. Yeah, and you also should have a dogish in the daleth. All right? Divrei. Divrei. Why is this hirik at the beginning? Can't have two schwas at the beginning of a word. Can't have two schwas at the beginning of a word. All right? Then your translation. Translate the following phrases into Hebrew. The house of the king. The house of the king. Greg, I think we're up to you.
Beit Hamelech.
Okay, the house of the king. Beit Ha Melech. All right, Beit Hamelech. Notice there's no article on house because in the construct relationship, the article cannot be put on the noun that is constructed. It must be written with the last noun in the chain, and then it's understood to go with all of the nouns of the chain. So it's Beit Hamelech. All right? Chad.
I actually got that right, but it wasn't because I knew how to do it. I went back and I looked at the lesson with the vocabulary.
Well, good for you. That's what you're supposed to do.
And it said that 74% of the time it had this bait form and said that it was house up, so.
That's
but
right.
I didn't understand, like, if I just used the rules to come up with that, I probably wouldn't have gotten that answer.
No, you wouldn't have.
Is that an exception?
It's one of those exceptions because it's an exceptional word. Correct. But you did exactly what you were supposed to do. Okay, Tom?
What if we put a McCafe connecting the two?
A McCafe connecting them? If you did, no problem. Just don't get in the habit of doing that because you'll get in the habit of thinking every time you have a McCafe, you have a construct state. And this past weekend, as I was grading papers for third semester Hebrew on their syntactical analysis of their passages, I put a lot of errors and took off a lot of points for those guys who saw McCafe and said, oh, this is construct. And they had a verb in construct with a prepositional phrase. They had all kinds of weird stuff because they looked at the McCafe as being the sign of the construct. It is not the sign of the construct. It merely says that two words that are connected by it are to be pronounced as one word. That's all it says. And it just so happens that in the construct state, you have that same situation, but it doesn't demand the use of McCafe. You'll have many, many, many constructs with no McCafe anywhere in sight, and you'll have many, many words that have a McCafe that are not construct. So don't get in the habit of equating the two or writing it always with the two.
So another sign then is, other than just context, is an accent?
The accent, conjunctive accent, and also the change in vowels. The change in vowels. Okay, questions? John first.
Well, each of these have a construct state, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, then the two things, because the first rule said that the sign of it is that there's either a McCafe or a conjunctive accent.
But that's not always true. I mean, what I want to get you away from is always thinking all McCafes are constructs. That's what I want to wean you out of.
Right, but
Okay.
the only thing is, like, as I was doing this, the only
Right.
way I knew how to write it was with
Yeah,
the
but you know how to write the vowel change. The vowel change can be used without the accents and without McCafe. All right? So I want you to never, never, never get to where you're dependent upon McCafe for a construct. That's my point, okay? Because if you do, you're going to end up like those fellows in third semester that are identifying these weird relationships as constructs that are not construct at all. All right? Scott.
Can I clarify, because I did the same thing, because I didn't know how to do the
Yeah.
accents. I put the
Right.
McCafe to make sure that,
Yeah, and at this point, all I'm expecting you to do is make certain you have the vowel pointings right.
so it's okay.
Forget about the conjunctive accent. You know one conjunctive accent you can always use, and that's Munach. That's the one you've learned, and you could use it. But don't. It always goes next to the vowel that's in that state, the only vowel you can. You can't put it on a half vowel. And so in all those that you have, it'd have to be right here. That's the only vowel you have. So you'd be putting it right here. That's another one. That's not the Munach. That's another conjunctive accent. Okay, not the Munach. Yes?
Can I take you back? I had a question on why Elohim in question 6 up at the top had the, why is it Ha Elohim? I thought we didn't need to put that on.
You don't need to put it there, but in the Hebrew, it is sometimes put. Mhm. Right. Okay, just like in Greek, you sometimes have ha theos, but you don't need to have ha theos. All right. Other questions there, John?
So with bait, that's the contract form. I should have known that. But if we went from the lexical form and tried to make a construct,
You would end up in all kinds of weird things.
and we get the question wrong.
Right. That's right. That's why you have to go back and look at your forms given in your vocabulary and the references given to you in your textbook on this. Okay? All right. Let's go to the next one then. We have the man of God. Let's see, where were we at? Let's see, Mike, did you do that last one? Who did this last one? Up here on Beit Hamelech. Greg. Okay, so we're up here to Kenny then. Kenny, you do the man of God then. The man of God. All right, Ish Elohim. Any questions? Scott?
Follow up to Scott's question then, is it still correct with the article on the front of Elohim?
Correct. You may put the article on there or you may leave it off. Both are correct. Just don't have it on Ish. You could also have Adam.
Is that with the, is Adam with the Schwab?
Adam in the construct. Enosh, you just leave it as Enosh if you have Enosh. Just like that. All right? Greg?
The Holom, Elohim, is it only in the, not in that form, but in the other parts of the construct where it would be, where it would change to a short?
Remember, this is not the noun in construct. This is the noun in construct. Only the noun construct changes.
The last one is just.
The last one stays in its normal form. Okay? All right? The Son of God. Then we're over here to Gus.
Ben Elohim.
Okay, Ben Elohim. Or Ben Ha Elohim. Okay? Just make certain that this is the Ben here. All right? And then the next one is the words of the priest. John?
Daber Hikohen. Hekohen.
HaKohen. All right, but if it's going to be words of, you're going to have div re. Words of, divrei, okay? Divrei HaKohen. All right, the mayors, not M-A-Y-O-R-S, mayors of the daughter, Jeff?
Susot, had that.
Okay, Susot, and excuse me here. Okay, Susot Habat. Susot doesn't change in the construct. Doesn't change in the construct. All right. The name of the city. Scott?
Shame, Ha'ir.
All right. Shame. Ha'ir. Now, is it shame or is it what? Remember, it has to shorten. Shem, just like Bain, Ben. Shame, Shem. All right? Shem shortens. Shem shortens. Yes.
Will all series in the beginning change to a sigil? Or
Yes.
will they sometimes change to a...
No, sigil.
Okay.
There might be one or two rare cases where it changes to a hirik instead, but almost always.
But all comments change to a symbol schwa, not a pathic.
It depends on their situation. Some change to apathic. So we'll just have to leave that for where it comes. All right? All right. Shem Ha'ir. And all of the nations. All of the nations. Eric?
Kol Hagoyim.
Okay. Hagoyim.
The comments how to. Kol.
And it's Kametz Hatuf, right. Kol Hagoyim. All right. And then number 8, the brother of the woman. James Lee.
Ehi, Aisha.
All right. Ahi Ha'isha. Remember, brother is one of those that takes a very strange ending. The hirik yod for the end of it. Ahi Ha'isha. Questions? Okay, David Lee. The hands of the good servant.
Yedot. Ha'eved. Hatov.
Yedot ha'eved hatov. Or, what else besides Yedot? Anyone? Yedei. Either of these are acceptable. Remember, it's an irregular noun. It's actually a feminine noun, but yadayim in a dual is a masculine dual. And sometimes you'll find the form following the masculine dual form to become yadei. And you'll find others that will change and make it the feminine plural yadot. So both are acceptable. Yadot ha'eved hatov or yadei ha'eved hatov. The cities of the great land. The cities of the great land. We're down to, let's see, you did that, David? Okay, John Milcon.
Number 10.
Yes.
Yerot ha'eretz gdolah.
Haaretz. Remember, it changed. And the great land would be Hagedolah. Okay, Irot haaretz Hagedolah. And that's another one where you have to memorize that eretz changes to aretz when you put the article on it. There's 5 words like that in Hebrew. Yes, Eric?
The ear is the construct plural, right?
Ear is the singular construct plural, city of. And this is cities, plural.
Well, I'm saying the one in this example, is it are?
You can do 2. All right? This is the same situation as you have here. You have those that have are. That's okay. All right? And you should have seen that on, I think, an earlier lesson. We gave an example of the exceptions that take place. Okay? If you have Yerot, I'll count it correct. If you have Are, I'll count it correct. The one that occurs most often is Are. Are. All right? Now, let's go to D. D, circle the construct form in each group which is pointed incorrectly and explain why. And let's see, we finished with John Milcon. Kelly, take number 1 and choose the one that is pointed incorrectly and explain why.
The middle pole.
All right.
And it should reduce to a Kametz Hatuf.
Correct. It should be reduced to a Kametz Hatuf. It should be written a Kaf with a Kametz and Lamed instead of written with a Holem. All right? To be all of. Number 2. Come back up to Scott Basolo.
The and it should be a Hatapathic under the olive, and then Eric Yod.
All right. Now there are 2 possibilities here. What's the other possibility? Anyone? Shem for Shem. All right. So you could do either one here. You could have this one with Ahi, or you could have Shem being Shem. All right. Number 3. James Wood.
The third one?
The third one. Why? Okay, it should be am instead of am. All right, number 4, Dennis. Okay, the third one, har, should be hair. Mountain of. Roger, the last one, number 5.
The third one.
Okay.
Right at the end.
You can either correct it to divrei, or You could say that it looks like the attempt was try to make a singular and that it should not have the last ending on it. It should be just devar. So there's two ways for you to correct that. To take the tseri yod off, to say that it's an incorrect singular form, or you can correct the first vowels to show that it should be the proper plural form. So whichever way you correct it. Because the way it was written, it's as though someone started out trying to write it from the singular and ended with a plural ending. So whichever way you corrected it, but you should correct it one of the two ways. Okay? Any questions on that one? Should be either it should be devar in the singular, or it should be divrei in the plural. You should have one of those two. Indicate whether the statement is true or false. If the answer is false, edit the statement so it is worded correctly. Number 1, Jan.
The statement is true.
Okay, words bound together by makaf are essentially considered one word, but are not always in a construct relation. True. Anyone who gets that wrong, you're going to be plagued by that. That's why I emphasize this so much. Don't depend on makaf for a construct relationship. All right. Number 2, Mike.
Each noun in construct loses its accent as long as vowel false if possible.
If possible. Correct. There are some long vowel situations like rosh, where you do not lose it, tov, where you do not lose it. There are many situations where you can't, like melech, you can't change it. Now, they all do lose the accent, but they don't all lose the long vowel. It's false. Each noun construct loses its accent and its long vowel if possible. Or you put, and normally it's long vowel. But it's not true that they all lose the long vowel. Okay? Number 3, Tom.
False.
Okay.
This
How would you correct it?
It should be full letter vowels cannot be reduced. This is what I have here. Just kind of take off the normally. I don't like the silence.
It's actually true.
Is it true?
Normally, full letter vowels cannot be reduced. However, occasionally, they are shortened when they occur in a noun and construct. Only occasionally. Occasionally. Look at this. We had an example today that we're reading. We had rosh. Rosh is a long vowel that normally is not reduced. But we had an example where it was reduced to rashe. Remember that? It was in the first part of this exercise. In one of the examples in Hebrew, the tops of the mountains, it was reduced.
What about a full letter vowel? Because that's just a full letter vowel.
Full letter vowel. Does it say full letter there? Or full vowel? Okay, full letter vowels cannot be reduced. Now, if you felt it was false just because it said normally, and occasionally they are shortened. Yeah, this has got to be false. Excuse me. I was not thinking of full letter vowels. That's like if you have tov, that's a full letter vowel. And you have, I'm going to waffle a little bit here because I'm going to tell you something here. We just had another example, didn't we? All right? Because when I start thinking about these things, is that a full letter vowel, the hirik yod? And what did we do? I'm going to go back to the same thing I said before.
So it's back to true.
Back to true. All right? The problem with true and false in these Hebrew things is that for every rule there's an exception in Hebrew. Probably even for that rule. Yes, Scott?
Page 78 in the textbook says it remains long since these cannot be reduced.
Are we back to?
We just saw them reduced, however. Yeah, I have to go back and look at that and see if maybe I need to reword that. Like I said, every rule you make in Hebrew can have an exception, so you have to be very cautious how you word them.
The exception on this
I will not count this against you. All right? If you have true or if you have false, I'm not going to count it against you. All right? All right? Is that called situation ethics? The problem is that's just the true case of it, guys. There's just so many exceptions that try to state things exactly is just very difficult. And you'll find if you go to some of the other Hebrew grammars, they'll say the same thing we said, and yet there's all these exceptions. That's what drives Hebrew grammarians up a wall, is trying to reduce the language and at the same time trying to account for all the exceptions. Dr. Bushnitz will have to sit down and discuss that and see what we're going to do about the wording in the text. We're trying to finalize it for publication electronically with Logos, so we've got to reach some decisions. Okay, number 5. In the Hebrew Bible, the construct is always attached to the absolute genitive, in quotes. That's another name for that absolute noun, remember, with a makef. True or false? Oh, good. Now you see that we had number 1 in there, and now we have number 5 treating the same issue, just tricking you to see if you're going to bite one way or the other. But number 1 is true, and number 5 is false. Okay, number 6. Just cross out always on number 5. In the Hebrew Bible, the construct is sometimes attached to the absolute genitive with the makef. Sometimes. Oh, did we skip 4? Okay, the noun in construct is normally translated in a way that joins 2 nouns in the construct relation with the English preposition of. That's true. Okay? Number 6, when the word in the absolute or the genitive is definite, the word in the construct also has the article written with it in Hebrew, since they must agree. True or false? False. It's not written with it. It's translated with it, but not written with it. Okay? That's false. Number 7, when an adjective qualifies a word in construct, the adjective is attached with the makef and inserted between the construct and the absolute. True or false? False. The adjective follows the noun that's absolute. Number 8, when a word with a dual ending is in construct, the pointing is identical to a plural masculine noun in construct. True. There are some exceptions of that, like we saw with yad, but basically that's true. Basically, but, yes. Now, if you gave an exact example of it and decided to answer it as false, then that's fine. I will consider counting it. Kelly? Number 8. All right.
Just because there's the provided example
Yes.
in the chart.
Yes.
So it has nothing to do, because it's...
So there's 2 possible answers for number 8. Okay, pass those forward, please. You're to read chapter 13 for Tuesday. I want to start on it now because we're going to have a review on Thursday for your exam that will be Tuesday. So I want to get a start on this because this is something that will need repetition a number of times. And so verb conjugation, very quickly here in the last 2 minutes of class here. Verb conjugations. In Hebrew, we have what we call simple verb conjugations like the kal and the nifal. Those are called simple conjugations. The causative conjugations are like hifil and hofal. Those are the names for them. And the intensive conjugations are the piel, pual, and hithpael. If you're looking at your textbook, this is in lesson 13. Lesson 13. And what we're talking about is given to you on page 92. Page 92. All right? So as we're looking at this, these are the names of the 7 verb conjugations in Hebrew. 7 conjugations. Kal, nifal, hifil, hafal, piel, pual, and hithpael. Let's read them together. Kal, nifal, hifil, hafal, piel, pual, and hithpael. Now, when you read these, the names are derived from the ancient Hebrew grammarians practice, and usually these were Arab grammarians, wrote the first Hebrew grammars, of choosing the verb for the paradigms, pa'al. Pa'al in Hebrew means he did, he worked, he made. It's similar to asa. And so they derive the names for them this way. You don't see it with the kal. Kal is a short meaning. It means to be light, to be quick, to be rapid. And so the form of the verb that is unencumbered by any changes, it's the light form, is called kal. And it is the basic verb form that you've learned already for your vocabulary. Asa, he made, he did. Katav, he wrote. Malak, he reigned, he ruled. Zavach, he sacrificed. Kadash, he was holy. That is a kal form that you've been memorizing. The kal, it's the basic simple form. So pa'al would be the verb in the same. Notice all these have ah-ah. Ah-ah, ah-ah, ah-ah. Shamer, he kept. Pakad, he visited. Just like you had all those others. Okay? Kadesh, Shalach, Malak. As the normal form. Sometimes we have a hey on the end, like asa, then you have two commences. But this is the normal form here to have these. Pa'al, he made. Shamer, he kept. Pakad, he visited. Then you have a nifal. And notice the nifal is exactly the way it sounds. Nifal, he was made. Nishmer, he was kept. Nifkad, he was visited. The nifal is a passive of the kal. The kal is active, the nifal is passive. And notice that if you can pronounce the Hebrew word, you know the Hebrew conjugation. The name is nifal. Listen to the sounds of the words. Nifal, Nishmer, Nifkad. All right? Nimlak. They all start with ni, and they have the same vowels, the same pattern. The hifil. Hifil, he caused to make. That's why we call it causative. Hishmir, he caused to keep. Hifkid, he caused to visit. Notice again, if you can pronounce the name of the conjugation, hifil, the sound of the verbs are the same. Himlik, he caused to rain. Hishlik, he caused to send. Hifkid, he caused to visit. Hishmir, he caused to keep. The same sound. That he and then the internal e, the hirik yod. Hafal is the passive. Hafal, he was caused to make. Hashmer, he was caused to keep. Hafkad, he was caused to visit. And then the so-called intensives, but please don't tie yourself too much to the intensives. They're not always intensive in meaning. Pi'el, he made. Shimer, he kept. Piked, he visited. We already had diber, he spoke, is a piel. Kidesh, he sanctified, or he was holy in a piel. The pual is the passive. Pual, shumer, pukad. Notice the vowels are the same as in the name. And then hithpael, you have hithpael, he made himself. Hishtamer, he kept himself. You'll see a transference there of the two letters. We'll talk about that later on. And hithpaked. So the hithpael has the hith on the beginning of it, and it has the same vowels. Hithpael, hishtamer, hithpaked. If you know the 7 names, you can identify any of the perfect forms of any of these verbs. You don't have to memorize 7 different paradigms for every verb. You only need to memorize the first paradigm, the kal, to know the names correctly, so you know the characteristics, and you know all the rest of the perfect forms.